All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Robust American Love. My name is Karen Carboner, and I am president of the Walt Whitman Initiative. We are a 501c3 nonprofit arts organization, and our mission is to celebrate New York City's literary legacy. We serve as an organizing center for cultural activism and poetry-related events, just like the one that you're just about to enjoy. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram and tune into our YouTube channel to explore more presentations in our Robust American Love speaker series. And if you like what we're doing, please come and support us. You can do so by visiting the support us link at our website. And we have a PayPal link and an address for checks up there. We are fueled by our love of poetry here, but we really do need the public to help sustain our programs, events, and initiatives. And we appreciate you all tuning in to the show today. We decided to offer this series, and you might note the word speaker in there, Robust American Love Speaker Series. There's not a lecture in there. This is a series of timely public-facing conversations on Whitman's life, work, and legacy, and also on sort of the greater value of poetry, especially on the streets of New York City. You will hear conversations and enjoy presentations by teachers, poets, graduate students, artists, printers, activists, and amazing nonprofits like the one we will hear from today. These are not designed to be academic talks, but they are free, open, informal discussions. And I hope if you are tuning in live, that you might have a Q&A participation with us and our speakers. We invite you to do that. If you're watching on YouTube, that is easy to do, right? Just like put your question into the chat section. And if you miss one of our events, of course, you can always catch them live. Not live, but seemingly live on the Walt Whitman Initiative's YouTube channel. A couple of announcements. I'm so glad to have the speaker series continue. It feels like a world away from our August discussion. And that was just such a wonderful meeting with Julia Garrow up in Canada with the Walt Whitman Canadian group. I'm located now in London, UK, and delighted to tune in, even though it's a little bit later in this part of the world. And still very actively looking for Robust American Love participants. So if any of you out there have an idea, or perhaps you are someone who would like to be on the Robust American Love speaker series, you can always email us and let us know your idea. Easiest way to do that is just to email walt@waltwhitmaninitiative.org. And we'd be delighted to hear what you have in mind. We have a great lineup. October 19th is our next speaker series, and I'm delighted to say that the Fort Greene Park Conservancy will be joining us with a number of people involved in the Fort Greene Park Conservancy for quite many years now. The title of that talk will be Cultivating Whitman's First Leaves of Grass, because as some of you know, Walt Whitman actually helped found Fort Greene Park. He wrote daily editorials in 1846 and 47 to establish a lung for Brooklyn, which was growing really quickly, but without many outlets. And Fort Greene Park was founded in 1847, largely because of these editorial efforts of Whitman, and became Brooklyn's first official park. So you can find out more about Whitman's background with the park and also what the Conservancy is currently doing to preserve that amazing green space, as many Brooklynites will attest, on October 19th at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Today, I'm incredibly proud to present Executive Director Paul Morris and Program Manager Danielle Molden of the House of Speakeasy. I must say that the meeting was really interesting, and we'll get into it, I'm sure. Danielle was at the New York City Poetry Festival with us in July, and so warm and so welcoming, and kind of showed us this bookmobile So we at the Walt Whitman Initiative were enormously impressed, and we said we have to have them on board. So we're so delighted to have Paul and Danielle talking about the House of Speakeasy. This is also a New York-based nonprofit organization, just like the Walt Whitman Initiative. They are 501c3. They are dedicated to bringing writers and books to the public in innovative and accessible ways. And they're here today to discuss the evolution of the House of Speakeasy. It's been around for just barely, I guess, 8 years or so. It was founded in 2013. And developed these very distinct educational programs, including the Bookmobile, which we were especially proud to kind of like view and learn about from Danielle. The Bookmobile delivers books and authors to neighborhoods where few or no bookstores exist. And even though House of Speakeasy is New York based, the Bookmobile is not necessarily. It's been all over the place, including as far south as New Orleans. And we'll hear more about that, especially from the COVID perspective, because I think for a lot of us, it's been a real challenge to continue good work for the public with the limitations caused by COVID. Paul and Danielle, welcome to Robust American Love.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us too.
And Paul, you too. I have not met you before, but I'm so delighted to meet the executive director. And I know you've been with House of Speakeasy since 2016. Is that right?
Oh, he's muted.
Yes, thank you, Karen. I'm just unmuting myself. You think after 18 months of being on Zoom calls, I'd have figured out by now. Yes, I've joined. First of all, it's nice to be here. Thank you. It's good to meet you face to face over Zoom, if not in person. I'm a big fan of the Walt Whitman Initiative, and we're big fans of Fort Greene Park. Our office is really close to Fort Greene Park. The book truck drives by it often. Our office is really close, and I live not too far myself. So it's really nice to know that we're all part of the same little community that can have a big ripple effect. But yes, I joined in 2016. The organization was founded in 2013. And we've been adding staff ever since to handle a lot of the programming that we're aspiring to do.
Well, thank you. And it's good to hear. Both of you are tuning in from Brooklyn. Is that right, Danielle?
Yeah, I live right in Borum Hill.
Okay. Brooklyn's in the house, man. Walt would be very proud as I wear his hat. I constantly am like underneath his hat. Tristan Pullen is behind the scenes here. And Tristan, do you want to just like shout out a hello? There he is.
Hello.
Yay! So Tristan is not only largely responsible for just like making this event happen, but he designed the image behind me, which is a very fitting image of Whitman during COVID times. He's even got earbuds in. Tristan, thank you so much for being here today. Before we get into the House of Speakeasy, I would love to hear from both of you guys, Paul and Danielle, just because you're living such amazing literary lives. And I think a lot of the people who are tuning in, and I can think of one or two right off the bat, would love to be doing the same thing. You know, just like living a life of poetry. So I don't know, Paul, maybe I'll get started with you. How did it come to be? How did you manage to like make a career of the thing that you love?
Yeah, so I was texting Danielle just a second ago because I am getting some traffic out my window. One of the joys of living in Brooklyn is the sounds of the opposite of sounds of silence, right? So, but that dump truck has just passed, so now you can hear me hopefully.
I think our listeners, they're global and they would love to hear Brooklyn traffic, so don't worry about it.
Okay, great. Well, yeah, I feel so lucky, first of all, to be able to work in this industry and to have had a career like I've had. I couldn't have mapped it when I was coming out of college. I couldn't have predicted where it would take me. But I think being open and being interested, enthusiastic, and wanting to work with good people is and good organizations is part of the strategy, right? Is to sort of just be ready to say yes when the right opportunity comes around. But I guess my start came from working in publishing in general. I needed an internship in college. I was studying religion and philosophy, not very marketable pursuits. And I got a job at a comic book company in Massachusetts where I was going to school. And I was a fan of comics. It published a lot of Robert Crumb comics. And I just got my feet wet there. And then had an opportunity to move to New York in the mid 90s to work at Penguin Books, so Penguin Classics, and some of the books that Penguin publishes. It's been a straight shot ever since, moving around from magazines to book publishing house to magazines again, to nonprofit magazines, to nonprofit organizations, literary organizations, and just sort of trying to get a sense for where the biggest impact that I could make was in steering myself in that direction. Again, just being motivated by the enthusiasm of my peers and colleagues and writers was part of the plan as well, I think. And just again, just wanting to do good work was a big part of it.
Now, I know that you promote writers and you bring literature to people who might not have it at easy access. Do you yourself do any writing, Paul?
Not anymore. As I became more advanced in my career, I had less and less time to write. But I think I started out in this industry because I thought I would write, or because I had friends who were doing it, or I fancied myself a writer and liked the idea of what it might look like to be a writer living in New York City. But there's so many distractions and so many other pursuits and so many other ways to be creative. I found that being around writers and working with writers, publishing them, promoting them, helping them get launched, or helping their books get a wider readership, had a lot of rewards, more rewards for me personally and professionally than trying to write my own work. I did have some essays published. I worked on some other projects, but none were so rewarding as helping other writers find their platforms.
And I think we're seeing your own background there, right? Like that's your actual bookshelf.
Yeah, that's that's one of my bookshelves. Yes, those are real life books.
Yeah, well, just as an academic, I know there's like a real competition with Zoom, like having the most impressive bookshelf behind you. And yours is pretty substantial. So it looks like even if you're not doing a lot of writing these days, you're actually still doing some reading.
Again, I wish I had more time to be reading, but my partner would disagree and think that I probably haven't. I probably am not doing as much reading as I should or could. But Danielle and I were just moving boxes today, and I was like, oh, I got to read some of these books. And I took one or two home with me. And best intentions are always to try to carve out time to read, but again, there's a lot of distractions. But yes, there have been moments where all I was doing was reading and carving out time to do that. And nothing like a good book, nothing like walking into a bookstore or library and walking away with a couple of titles that are new, or open up new worlds.
I know this for myself that I teach literature, but it's few and far between when I actually get to read a new book. It's an irony of the profession, right? Like to just not have the time for that. And the other irony for us at the Whitman Initiative is that we have a donor named Susan Tane who is donating a Whitman library for us, which we are just beginning to set up down at South Street Seaport, right around the corner from McNally Jackson. So we're very excited about that. And maybe that will bring us back to reading ourselves. Paul, was there anything that you read, like, I guess in the days when you were still kind of formulating this type of career, were there writers that really stood out to you, or maybe people that you've worked with recently that have really made a deeper impression on you?
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard to choose. Contemporary fiction, contemporary poetry filled my shelves and my life when I first moved to New York and started getting involved in the business. Some really wonderful poets and writers that I'm now friends with. Tina Chang, Tracy K. Smith are really wonderful poets who I'm now honored to know personally. Brooklyn is a big place, but it's also a very small place when you're in the book business, and you get to know these writers. So oftentimes some of my favorite writers are my friends. They become people that I know and can invite to parties or have dinner with. Some other great writers that I'm really happy to be friends with and respect their work. The graphic memoirist Mira Jacob and Brendan Kiley, who's just got a book out this week for sort of a YA audience. It's about how to understand your own white privilege and what that brings with it in the world. So again, it's hard for me to identify or zero in on any one writer because there's just a sort of an abundance of voices out there that are worth celebrating, and that's also the joy of my job, is to sort of be, we not only contain multitudes, but our bookshelves contain multitudes, and our recommendations could be limitless if we had all the time in the world. But I'm curious to ask you that same question, Karen, and also to hear from Danielle, who I know has a library that's filled with books for her child and probably has some great recommendations as well.
Well, I was going to say to our listeners that all they have to do is go to the House of Speakeasy website and see the number of writers that you guys have worked with, which is a huge, really impressive list, to see that you guys have, connections and you're using them not for some sort of like higher sort of intellectual purpose, but to bring them to the people. And no better place to do this than Brooklyn. And I think, the bookmobile idea, and I'm going to switch over to Danielle because in addition to just being the program manager, she is the driver of the bookmobile. So Danielle, so good to see you here. And maybe if you could just say, sorry, I don't know what's
okay.
going on. But if you have a way to introduce our listeners into how you managed to do this. And I know the House of Speakeasy is not the only thing that you're doing.
Yes.
So perhaps
Yes.
you can fill in the blanks, because you really have a very exciting life, as Tristan and I were saying right before we actually went on air, but would love to hear from you about like the different things you're doing for House of Speakeasy and also maybe outside of it as well.
Yep, sure. I started at House of Speakeasy, I want to say 4 months ago. And it was a really weird way that Paul and I met through Facebook, through a post. We're in the same group on Facebook, and he needed a driver because the current driver was going to be leaving the country. And as we talked, we realized that it could be more than just a driving thing. For me, I actually graduated with a degree in creative writing, and my minor is in fine art. I moved to the city about 3 years ago, Karen, with like no plan and no job. I just moved here, and I said, I'm going to make, with a 5-year-old in tow, I said, I'm just going to make it happen. I'm going to make it happen. Like, I have to at least try, because I don't want to be that person that, dies one day thinking I shoulda, coulda, woulda. Like, life is for people who live, right? Like, so I moved here with the CDLB, and I stumbled onto House of Speakeasy. Really, it was a coincidence, I would say, right? And now I work as a program manager. I spend a lot of time curating partnerships, seeking out people in the city that are also small nonprofit organizations, and trying to find a way that we can build a connection where we can work together, because we all have kind of limited resources, but we can do more for more people if we work together instead of working independently, like over here, over there. We can get together and do more as a group. I'm really a big believer of, if I have a little and you have a little, then we should build a bigger table and share what we have. And then just building a lot of networking. I do a lot of just talking to people. Like, when we went to the poetry festival, I just want to talk to everyone and let them know what I do and how they can help and how we can work together, like I said, to do more. And outside of that, I also drive the truck. I'm in charge of the maintenance for the truck, keeping on the road, keeping it roadworthy. And I also work with another nonprofit that does something similar, but with science. They bring science to historically underrepresented children and families in New York City, and give them a chance to touch science and meet scientists, and kind of see that also is an avenue that they could pursue.
What is the name of the other organization?
Oh, it's called BioBus.
Okay,
And
so
they're based in Harlem.
okay, very cool that you're doing driving for two different nonprofit organizations.
Yeah. Yeah.
I need to know how the ad looked for a driver for House of Speakeasy. Like what kind of ad did you answer for that?
It wasn't an ad at all. We had just talked about a post in a Facebook group that Paul and I both belong to, about a box truck driver who had hit a car. And I told, I posted something like, sometimes when you're driving a box truck, you don't even realize that you hit the mirror. Like sometimes it's so big, it's hard to tell sometime on some of those narrow roads that they hit the mirror. And Paul reached out to me and said, hey, I saw that you know how to drive. And I said, yes. And then we had a meeting here in Brooklyn about filling that need for a driver. But then as we were talking and I was giving a little bit of information about what I do at BioBus, we found that I could do more than just drive. So surprise.
Because here you are, as you said, a creative writing major. So I guess
Yeah.
are you still writing as well?
Yeah, I write mostly poetry and some short stories. I don't have anything published or anything like that. I think I do it for my own sanity. Like I just like to, write. I just put some things out for a COVID, like quarantine, life in quarantine. I submitted to them and I'm just kind of waiting to hear back if that's going to be published with life in quarantine or not.
Wow, good luck with that one.
Thank
That's
you.
awesome. Okay, so we have two movers and shakers for this organization. House of Speakeasy, maybe Paul, you can tell us more about that. Like, how did the organization get founded? And I think it has a very storied development, right? And evolution, because it started in a very different way than it seems to be led now.
Yeah, that's right. It started out as a storytelling cabaret show inspired by a model that came over from the UK. So the two founders of Speakeasy, their names are Amanda Foreman and Lucas Whitman. Amanda is a distinguished biographer, historian. She wrote Georgiana. She has a great Netflix docuseries, The Ascent of Woman. And Lucas Whitman is an established editor in New York City. And they both wanted to do something that was a little bit different than a lot of the readings that we're all familiar with. When pre-COVID, we all go into bookstores or libraries or event spaces and we see people read from their books. They're either book launches or their conversations between two different authors or moderator. And they wanted to do something very, very different. And the sort of the core of it was break down the barriers between author, book, screen, lectern, et cetera, and put them on stage or put them in a format that was going to allow authors to speak directly to an audience that was an audience of readers and book lovers, but also doctors and lawyers and media professionals and finance people who we are all in this community. We might take for granted. I hope we don't. I sometimes do, that we're around writers all the time, that we're surrounded by writers and creative people. Think about people who are in different industries who don't often have that exposure, right? So it's 100 times more exciting for them to be in a room and to see one of their favorite writers on stage, or to see a new writer on stage that they've never met before or never heard from. So the model is this for a show, the flagship program of Speakeasy. It's called Seriously Entertaining. It started out at an event space in Manhattan called City Winery. It quickly got so established that Joe's Pub at the Public Theater, which is a very old theater and very distinguished space to be invited to go perform, invited us to go move Seriously Entertaining there. And it's very simple. 4 writers on stage throughout the night over the course of an hour and a half, all talking on a shared theme. The theme on any given night could be as good as it gets. It could be you win some, you lose some. They're often frivolous. They're very open to interpretation. They're shared themes. So it's a monthly show. On a January night, you might get two really distinguished writers. One's a published poet, one's a published memoirist, and then you've got a debut novelist paired with maybe a comedian. And so it's a real mashup. It's what we like to call a literary mixtape of writers. And really the only unifying principle there is that they're all published authors. And we sell their books. We try to make, we have partnerships with bookstores. We have partnerships with other book sourcing organizations to make sure the books are put into people's hands, that money goes back. We split the box office revenue with the writers, so the writers are paid directly. It's part of our mission as a nonprofit to pay writers for their time. If they're on stage performing, they're not writing. So we want to make sure that they are compensated for their time. So that's how the organization started, as a storytelling cabaret, and it was very popular from the start. It was built from the ground up, grassroots, through everyone's social networks. This is 2013, so obviously Facebook and Twitter had already existed, and just word of mouth, like old-fashioned word of mouth. Moving over to Joe's Pub was a big boost for us, because then we were amplified by their existing calendars, and it's obviously only taken off from there. We pivoted during the pandemic. We did the best that we could do. We went on to Crowdcast and offered virtual shows, which you can watch for free now. All of our programming during the pandemic has been for free. So whereas it's ticketed at Joe's Pub, just by the very nature of our model, it's since become free for the time being, and we hope to be back at Joe's Pub very soon.
So that kind of explains to me the name of the organization, the House of Speakeasy. So a speakeasy, of course, is, I guess, historically speaking, a place where it's almost illegal, right? There's some kind of subversive feeling about being able to do what you want without, I don't know, some sort of like supervision. And speakeasy, I guess you're kind of transferring that over to this idea of just getting four writers on stage, not necessarily to just talk about their books, but to actually converse together about a topic. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, exactly. The old-fashioned speakeasies originated during the Prohibition era. They were illegal. They were sort of underground. They were the 90s version. I mean, they were the 1920s version of 90s rave culture. You had to sort of know somebody to get in, and they were exciting. And you came in, you got to be with friends, and you got to sort of see something a little bit off the beaten path. And you actually didn't know what you were going to get when you walked in. And so that's the spirit in which I think the name comes from, but it also comes from the idea that it's a very casual environment. So at Joe's Pub and at City Winery, we offer, there's food service, there's drink service, there's drinking, and there's merriment, and there's all that. Not that alcohol has to be a part of any entertaining evening, but it's called serious entertaining. It's a little bit cheeky, and the space itself is conducive to a very convivial atmosphere. And so having these four writers, each one takes the stage for anywhere up to 10 to 15 minutes. They're never on stage together except for like a group shot. And they're up on stage with just a mic and a screen behind them, but they're not allowed to use papers. They're not allowed to use their books. They're not allowed to use their phones. That's a big no phones in their hands. And they, the idea is that they're really talking to an audience. And that's very primary to the model.
Yeah, Speakeasy, I guess I think first of Chumley's, which of course now resurrected, but back in the day, I remember taking my students there and having that real feeling of being underground. It's got to be interesting to select the four writers and to select the theme. Do you have any anecdotes about that? Like, was there ever a time where you selected four writers that might not have been the best mix, or were there any surprising results from like choosing a certain theme?
Yeah, and so you're really, tonight you're talking with me and you're talking with Danielle, which is really only maybe a sixth or an eighth of our team, but we really benefit from an amazing staff. Most of whom are all part-time. They all have other jobs like Danielle does. The co-founders themselves are busy raising families and writing biographies and publishing books. And our producer, Aaron Cox, who is in here tonight, but plays a pivotal role in curating the themes and identifying the writers, could speak much more expertly about the happy accidents that she's witnessed behind stage, on stage, and in the curation of themes. I do know that oftentimes when we put up an event description of who the writers will come or will be presenting that night, everyone gets excited for one author. William Dalrymple was scheduled to come, and he was great. He was amazing. He's barely in the U.S., so we got him. And then that show, when the people walked away, it was just surprising to hear people being blown away by someone that no one thought they were going to be impressed by. So sometimes the surprising moments aren't that somebody was, that something happened or that they got along or didn't get along. It's not so much between the writers as it is the experience of many of the audience members who then walk away and say, I just saw a writer that I'm going to remember for the rest of my life because I was here at Joe's Pub. They have this debut novel out, or they're a debut poet or whatever they are. And I'm going to remember them because they're going to be somebody very soon. And I got to witness them in a very intimate environment. And that's also part of the charm. And I think the success of what we do is that we give people a very memorable experience. Every single month I walk away thinking I was going to really be excited to see one writer, but then it turns out, oh, wow, I didn't even know that other writer. And now I have a much better sense of their entire background.
Very cool to mix it up, right? To not just like have like, the people that we would expect, but to sort of like blend it so that people have an experience of different voices. I love that idea. And I guess the ones that you did during COVID, they're up on your website, so people can access those for free. Is that right?
That's right. And if people can go to the chat box, I can just put in to Crowdcast right now and do that. Is that a possibility, Tristan or Karen? If I manage to do this somewhat.
Good question. Tristan, do you know if that will work? Yes, he says yes.
Yeah. So I'll drop in a link to our Crowdcast channel, and awesome. Audience members can go there. But I'll also recommend that you go straight to our YouTube channel, where you can not just watch the ones that we did virtually and live streamed over the last 18 months, but you can also go way back to 2014 and watch anybody from Simon Winchester, if you're a fan, or Eric Larson, or Salman Rushdie. We've had some great speakers, and I know I just mentioned three men, but they're amazing writers. There's there's just I don't even want to sort of it's hard for me to pick favorites, but over the pandemic we had Lillian Rivera, who's Bronx born and now living in LA. She was amazing. We had Charles Hughes, who won the National Book Foundation prize last year for fiction. Liara Tamari is probably one of my all-time favorite speakers of Speakeasy. She gave an incredible talk during the pandemic, and the list goes on. For fans of Mary H.K. Choi, I would say you don't want to miss her talk from earlier this year. She talks about immigration and being Asian American. At the same time, there was a lot of anti-Asian violence. Her talk is incredibly powerful, incredibly moving. I encourage everyone to see it. I just put a link to our Crowdcast channel in the chat. So I'll let you do your own exploration, and don't take my recommendations for anything other than my personal favorites.
Paul, thank you so much. And I'm just wondering, as you guys come out of COVID, are you still planning to do these online, or are they going live again?
So that's an interesting question, and I appreciate you asking, because we're constantly looking at our strategy, not just for Seriously Entertaining, but for Bookmobile partnerships and for Speak Together schools, which we can talk about in a little bit too. But we are trying to figure out how to retain the live audience experience. People who are used to seeing us in person at Joe's Pub, with what we've now experienced as being a much more national or global audience tuning into our shows. They're two very different audiences, right? Some people only know us through a virtual live stream. So I think when we go back into Joe's Pub, what we're going to try to do is record as many of them as we can, and then put them up on our YouTube channel. So if you go to our YouTube channel, you'll see a mix You'll see things from City Winery 2014. You'll see things from Joe's Pub in 2016 and on up. And then you'll see our virtual shows. Again, there's hundreds of hours of viewing, which is more than anybody has to spare right now. But if we're not all zoomed out from screens, they continue to be great distractions at times.
You know, we're facing the same thing because the Whitman Initiative signature event is our annual Song of Myself marathon reading, which is down usually at Brooklyn Bridge Park in full sight of the Brooklyn Bridge. And it's an amazing thing to experience live, but we have not been able to do that for the past 2 years. So we've been thinking, what do you do? Because there's definitely benefits, as this show has proven, because we've got people, I don't know, Japan, Iceland, you know, they're tuning in, and it's a very different audience than we're used to. So somehow the twain shall meet, right? Like maybe having it live, but being able to record it and to show it somewhere is like maybe the best of both worlds. So I'm so glad to hear that might be the case for this. And, you know, before I get to the bookmobile, just a couple of words, Paul, on the other programs, because I just read really briefly about Speak Freely and Speak Together. Anything we should know?
Yeah, again, you know, the way the organization has grown or expanded has tried to be as strategic as possible, and oftentimes organically developed, just as you and Danielle met and Governor's Island, and this is a result of that conversation. We would have people come to our shows and want to know, you have really amazing writers on your stage. Would you ever consider a school program, or would you ever have a writer visit our after school program? And so we now have developed what we call Speak Together. So let me just draw the distinction down the line. Seriously Entertaining is our public box office show. It's ticketed, it's monthly, as I've described it. We have our outreach program, which is just generally called Seriously Involved. So Seriously Entertaining is performative and show-based, ticketed. Seriously Involved is what we call our sort of charitable outreach initiatives. And right now there are 3 of those, but we're adding new ideas all the time. The 3 ideas include the bookmobile, which we'll talk about in just a second. Speak Together, which is when we bring writers either who performed on stage for us already, or we want to have performed on stage, into schools or after school initiatives. And they offer anywhere between between like a workshop or 2 or a semester long series of author visits. We've adapted the Seriously Entertaining model for schools so that we now go into high schools and we adapt that model, and we say, you know, 4 writers on stage in a school auditorium or in a black box theater, and they talk on themes that are appropriate for teens, aspirational themes like The Road Less Traveled or You Only Live Once. We try to be as playful as possible, and we choose writers that are appropriate for the audience there. We do poetry workshops, spoken word workshops. We do college readiness essay writing workshops for teens hoping to go on to college. In some of the schools that we work with, the students are often going to be some of the first people in their family to apply to college and go to college. So what we do is work with schools, try to work with educators who are really working hard, you know, college counselors, you know, college advisors, to help students just get a little bit of extra help. And they're often in schools that are traditionally under-resourced with regard to the literary arts. So that's Speak Together. I can talk more about that, but we're not here to talk necessarily about Speak Together. Speak Freely, in brief, is our teacher educator program. So Speak Together is primarily about supporting students at the high school level. Speak Freely is about working with teachers, especially public high school teachers who need all the support they can get. They're tireless. I don't know of another profession right now that probably deserves a pay raise than public high school teachers, especially after the last 18 months that they've had. And so what we try to have done in the past is give as many high school teachers as possible access to our Seriously Entertaining shows. So we reserve a set of tickets to Joe's Pub for them to come and witness what storytelling could look like on our stages, with the idea that they then go back into their classrooms and try to imagine incorporating some of this into their curriculum to the extent they can. I know it's not always possible, but we've also started developing curriculum based on some of the stories that result from our shows and from our school programs. So we had Jason Reynolds up on stage a couple of years ago. He was speaking on the theme, Turn the Page. We've now developed an entire enrichment curriculum called a Toolkit that we then make available to a much wider array of teachers who got to witness it that day. So the video of Jason, the toolkit of Jason's enrichment gets packaged and it gets delivered to national educators so that, as you mentioned, we're a New York-based organization, but we have now the opportunity to reach teachers in all parts of the country, which is, something we wouldn't have experienced if COVID had not forced our imaginations into that space. So Speak Together and Speak Freely are the two other areas besides the bookmobile that we do outreach. We don't charge for these services. We work with teachers, students, and communities that would welcome our work and our efforts.
Wow, I love to hear about this. I love the education focus, and you guys are doing a world of good, right? Like reaching it at both ends, at the teacher and at the student level. And I guess I saw that in action very clearly with the bookmobile, and just seeing the actual vehicle and seeing Danielle's energy sort of like emanating from all sides of this. I mean, Danielle, I know, were you the start of the bookmobile, or did you just like inherit the idea?
Me? Oh no, I wasn't the start of it at all. It was going before I got there. Like I said, Paul and I had met a couple months back on a Facebook wall, and I really believe in the mission, and I love what I do. I don't know that many people that get to wake up every day and say like I help other people. I get to go out and just give books away and just enrich people's life just a little bit, right? Like there's tons of jobs I could be doing, but I really believe in what I do, and like it's like to get the word out. I like to tell people what I'm doing. I want them to get me excited because, promoting and awareness is part of the big scene, right? Like people have to know what's going on in order to be involved or in order to provide support. Because if you don't know, then how can you, and it's just kind of pushing my agenda. Like I want everyone to know, like, come get a book. Because I love to read. I want other people to be able to read. And there's so many studies that have shown that just owning a book, having a book in your house is so beneficial in so many ways. So, and I guess that's part of it. I guess it's easy when you love what you do. It's not really a job. It doesn't feel like a job to me. Like yeah.
Well, you know what? I'm going to show some photos that you all sent me while
Right,
we
next.
do this, if that's okay. So
Oh yeah.
I want the whole story, Danielle, but I totally also want to show people about what's going on. And
Yeah.
I don't know if everybody is lucky enough to have experienced it. So this is just like one shot of, I guess you could even see the joy that the bookmobile is bringing. So can you bring us into a day in the life of the bookmobile driver for House of
Yeah,
Speakeasy?
sure. Yeah, I get up and I walk 15 minutes to the truck. And then I do my basic maintenance stuff. Then we go to a place. Lately I've been kind of securing those places and working with Paul and trying to find places that we will be the most impactful.
Well,
And then
this is a really good, interesting issue.
Yeah.
Like, how do you choose that? Like, how do you know where to drive the bookmobile? Because you guys have gone a long way. In fact, if readers don't mind that I flip through this, like
Yeah.
one of the things I wanted to put up was the path of the bookmobile, which is pretty impressive. And, not to be sort of like mean to the bookmobile, it doesn't look like a truck that can kind of endure a lot of miles. And yet you have driven it like thousands of miles. So how did you guys choose Atlanta, Georgia, New Orleans? Like what went into the choices of your stops?
I believe we had a partner for that one, right, Paul, that worked with us and definitely provided some support. It was a two organization effort, or maybe more. It was before my time, Paul.
It was definitely a multi-group effort. We worked with Narrative 4, which is another storytelling nonprofit. They had an annual summit that they were planning for New Orleans in the summer of 2019, and we thought, how great would it be to do a trip down to New Orleans and stop along the way. And we had a series of places that would welcome us and put us up, and thousands of books were donated, new books from publishers. And yeah, there's a great series of photos that I'm sure you'll scroll through at some point where we can see some of those.
Oh, geez, the logistics behind having enough books in the bookmobile and like keeping the bookmobile going, I'm just like overwhelmed by that idea. Yeah, I'm going to show some more pictures of the joy that the bookmobile brings. But so like this, I mean, Danielle, you want to talk a little bit about, like, we're just starting to kind of like get into your idea of a day in the life of driving this thing. And just looking at these faces, I can see some of the joys of what you're doing, because obviously you are bringing, culture and entertainment and joy and family time to people who might not otherwise experience it. But
yeah, it's so easy. At first it's a kind of eye-catching truck to begin with. The doors open, and then when people gather, people are curious what's going on. And then as they get closer, I pull them in like, hey, what are you doing? Come get a free book. And sometimes they're not sure, because not a lot of things are free anymore. They're, what do I have to do? And when I get to be able to say, you don't have to do anything, just existing, being here at this space at this time with me is all you have to do. And you've already done it. So, grab the book, take it off the shelf. If it resonates with you, take it home. And then to see the kids, I love to stop people while they're walking by. Come here. That's my favorite thing. Come and get a book. And then to be able to find the right book for the person too. Like if they say, oh, I'm not sure, be able to have a little conversation with them and try to find the book for them, or their book for their kid, or the book I think that might be great for them, and be able to find it in the truck or pull it off the shelf and make recommendations and have them walk away. Especially the children, I get the most kicks out of the kids, because I have a little girl, she grabbed the book and just hugged it like, I had to keep it forever. And I was like, yes, forever, that is your book for the rest of forever. It's your book. In order for her to be able to take it home, and like she can enjoy it now, she can enjoy it later, it's her book forever, and it's brand new, and it has nothing to do with your social economic status, has nothing to do with anything. Like it's just a model where everybody can just have the book in their hands. We are very fortunate to have some partnerships with like NYCHA and the Department of Transportation, and they do kind of help us identify some places where we can be beneficial. And we work well with like open streets and back to schools where other things are already going on, and be able to just add to that. Like they already giving out book bags, or they're giving out, they're having block parties and things like that, and we're able to be there and like, here's a book bag, and then I've got books to put in your book bag. This is a good way to start your school year. And I like what I do is, like I said, it's not really work. It's so easy to just be present. Or like with your daughter, I found that book for her and I went back and I said, I think this is the book.
London. Yeah, she loves that book.
Yeah, I was like, this is the book. I was like, listen, I know you left, you walked away already, but when you left, I found this book and I thought of you, and I had to go back and give it to her. And those moments just make me like so happy that I'm able to be there and be present and enrich people's lives just in a small way. Like it's not even, for me, I think it's, not massive. I'm not, but it's a book, but it's a book. It's a good start, right? Like it's a good way to just make someone's whole day can be better, just because I saw them somewhere on the plaza, or they were walking by to the grocery store and I stopped them and I said, hey, get this book for me. So.
Well, you're making it sound easy and fun, but there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah,
First of all,
I know. I know.
You have to know your books, right? And you have to be
Yeah.
able, I mean, you're a matchmaker, so you have to find a book and just like looking at someone, right? Or hearing them. Just
a little bit, yeah, to understand what they like, because I want them to walk away with something that they're going to enjoy. We're very lucky to have I have a second person in the truck with me, and she's a curator of books and has a past with books and way more understanding sometimes, and she's great. Like she's very helpful, and she definitely helps me out when I'm not sure. And so she's really, really great. And we're lucky to have such great staff.
Yeah, I wanted to show this photo. I'm not sure actually looking at it. I thought maybe this was some more of the staff, the House of Speakeasy staff. Maybe this is just, oh, maybe so, right? Like the people up.
Yeah, Paul's in there.
Okay, there we go. Paul, that's
Yeah.
you, right? Peace sign up front.
That's me, and then the rest of the people pictured are students in a summer school program down in Salisbury, Maryland. That was on the return trip from our cross country adventure, and so we stopped by it was a philosophy program. Students got to enroll in the philosophy of and the ethics of race, and they talked about they talked about incredible. I wish I had in high school had access to these kinds of teachers and educators who were doing it. But that these students all rallied around the truck and really enjoyed the experience. And I think, as you can tell, one of the benefits is not just dropping off books and putting books in people's hands and then getting to build their own libraries, but offering a sense of community, a sense of opportunity to engage with book culture and to browse and to get recommendations or to see what your colleagues or your friends are experiencing. Maybe both take books and then trade them later on. But without the truck there, if it's just boxes of books being delivered, which plenty of organizations do, and they do it really well, and on a scale that we just can't do, what the truck is able to do well is bring people together and create community.
And actually operate during COVID, right? Like this is one of the things that one can do even when our time indoors with each other doesn't really work out. So it's incredibly adaptable to what we're going through right now. How do you get the books?
Danielle are just taking a deep breath because
silence.
We have working virtually lately. We haven't had a need for a real office, and so when book donations come in, we have to scramble to find homes for them and places to go. I've got a couple of decades of experience working in the book publishing industry. Aaron Cox, our producer, has great connections to book publicists and editors and publishers. We get donations of almost all new, not previously owned books, direct from publishers or direct from sources where we can trust that these are not hand-me-downs. They're not beaten up books. We believe that books that should be given away are going to be new books, and that families can build their own home libraries with brand new books. I didn't mind. I have older siblings. I didn't mind hand-me-downs growing up. But I'd like to leave that to the parents to figure out and the siblings to pass down, not to give them someone else's discarded libraries. So we've got plenty of offers. We have too many offers of people who want to donate books to us. But right now, with a surplus of donations from publishers of new books, we don't see a need to accept used books right now.
Yeah, I noticed that when I saw you, Danielle, and the bookmobile. I mean, the books were beautiful. A lot of them were hardback and, pristine because they're new books. So this is not just sort of like a used book dealership. Right. This is and there is an enormous variety of the books, and they're really thoughtfully positioned and curated on the truck. So like I said, I think there's a lot more work behind this than your joyous presence is letting us know. But, it's not just kind of picking up remainders from publishers. Right. This is actually books that people really want.
Right.
So I was very impressed by that this place was bringing books that people really would love, and beautiful. All of us remember when you're growing up and you can smell a new book, right? And you can feel the joys of the new book. And even that book that you gave Annika was just like, so tangible and, such a lovely object to her that of course she wanted to take it with her, even on her big trip. So
that's amazing.
Well, that's part of the magic that you're doing. You're not just putting literature or poetry in the hands of people, you're giving them something, a treasure, as something to cherish. And you can see it on the faces of this crew here, the joy that they're getting out of this. And I think I also included a few more photos like this one, Paul. I wasn't sure why this was in that selection of photographs, but maybe this has a story connected to the bookmobile.
Well, it does. It's part of our trip back from. This is at the Margaret Mitchell House in Atlanta, Georgia, excuse me. And this was, part of our trip back was a combination of not just bookmobile visits, but of speak together programming. So we tried to work with a series of venues or programming spaces that would welcome writers and books to come into their environments and to work with summer school programming, because we left on that trip in mid-June. We came back in early July. So the summer school programs were happening, and we got to work, very, sort of free and loosely with some of these agencies who were welcoming some students in. And this was a program we did at the Margaret Mitchell House. They had about a 24 student roster of kids that were cycling through, and they got to spend some time with some authors.
Wow. Margaret Mitchell, writer of Gone with the Wind, you mean?
Yes.
Is in itself a very controversial read, as the movie even is these days. So that's very cool. And shows like what being mobile can really do, right? Like you're bringing, like insight and different perspectives into these communities. It's really moving to see it. I have a few other photographs here because Danielle, I was kind of impressed with some of the backgrounds of the bookmobile, like these iconic settings for like books.
Oh yeah.
So here we have, of course, the Brooklyn Public Library, and very dear to my heart, being a Brooklynite myself, and Walt Whitman, I don't know if you guys know, is up on that kind of like author's display right behind the truck. So we've got this, and I also put up here, this is, of course, I guess this is for the Joe's Pub stuff here, but it's very impressive to see it in this Manhattan location, also on Astor Place. So Danielle, back to you. Is there like, I don't know, was there a particular moment driving this truck that really struck you that you wanted to share with us? Do you have a good story about being the bookmobile driver?
Well, I love to drive, Karen. I've got CDL, which means I drive like stuff for like 7 years or so. I love to drive the truck, and it's one of the smaller of the things I drive around the city. I'm actually like excited.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's the smaller of the things I drive around the city.
But so do you have like a special license?
Yeah, I have a commercial license to drive everything up to buses. So buses, dump trucks, et cetera, et cetera. And before this, it's a thing, but that's another time for another story for another time. But yeah, so the book truck is nice though, because for me anyways, it's a little smaller. We can get into some spaces that I wouldn't normally be able to put other things. And I like to utilize the space. As far as driving goes, it's kind of commonplace for me. So I don't have any like super cool stories about driving the truck per se. I mean, at least not yet. So maybe something positive will happen right in the truck. But as far as driving goes, I have nothing that's like, cool to talk about. But
I think Danielle's too modest. Danielle, why don't you say what's going to happen tomorrow when you drive to the Bronx and go to the plaza and driving up onto the curb?
Yeah, but modesty is a thing that I do. I'm humble and modest and stuff. What do you mean, like going into the plaza? Like, is that what you mean?
Yeah,
like,
well, I think a lot of people might.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people might be surprised that the book truck goes up onto the curb and into the plaza.
I'm gonna go on the curb and through the planters and actually into the plaza space and utilize that space, because that's where the most people will be, and it's a big open space, so it's COVID safe and people will be walking by me. There's a subway station there and a lot of other like food places, and there'll just be people there. And the place we're going tomorrow, they're coming to like expect us to be there. We have a good crowd of people in the community that get excited to see us every time that we come. And I'm excited to go tomorrow too. That's going to be a lot of fun.
So what is it like? Like, do you just like you drive up and then you
We open up the sides, either one or two, depends on how many staff we have, normally just one side. And then the books are actually stored inside the truck that we need for the day. And then we take them out of the truck and thoughtfully kind of put them in places like the adults on the top and then the kids on the bottom so that the children can see it. It doesn't make any sense to put the children book on top where the kids can't see them. And then the people, we stop people or they come up and they always want to know, what are you doing? What's going on here? And then to give them a little speech about, oh, get a book, it's free, and have them like walk away. And then as they're walking away, calling people on the phone or telling other people, hey, there's a book truck, blah, 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 you got to come and get a book. And like, that's great. When it's like, oh yeah, I know you were here because my uncle told me or something. And then I just spend the whole day just, handing books out to everybody that walk by. And then at the end of the day, we close the sides and lock them up and close the back and lock it up and drive away on to the next place.
I think what my walk away is it's not just for children, right? So you have a lot of kids, but there's also adults that come to the book truck and
we're trying to serve the whole community and definitely families and children too. Like anybody that walks by, if I can give them a book, I do.
Incredible. And I just had one more photo that I had to share, which I love, like the book truck driving off into the sunset, almost looking like it's exploding from joy. Yeah. But it's so impressive to think about the goodwill and the type of organization that goes behind what you all are doing. I don't know. I'm very moved by the whole project, and I'm wondering, do you guys, either Paul, Danielle, I guess I'd love to hear from both of you, but a final word on, maybe the enterprises of the House of Speakeasy, or maybe what you hope for the organization, or if you want to reach out to our viewers, is there something that you just like to share or say?
I'll always defer to Danielle and hear what she has, because she's really on the ground and on the street and dealing with the book, the books and the book lovers. So Danielle, what do you think?
Okay. I was hoping you were going to talk first so I could think.
I mean, I could. I can buy you some time. What? Yeah. Why don't I offer this? The audience has heard a little bit about that we both really love what we do, and that there's a lot of goodwill surrounding our efforts. The staff is part-time, and it's a labor of love for many people. We have volunteers working as well on our programming. People want to come to us. They want to get involved. They tell us. People want to make donations to us. They can. We are constantly fundraising to support these efforts. It's been, it was tough during the pandemic because we couldn't do another cross-country trip. We couldn't do a lot of our programming in schools. There's an incredible amount of learning loss happening for students and educators. And so whatever we can do right now to help bolster the efforts of educators, we will try to find a way. And of course, we're staying active with the book truck. But it is inspiring work. It does make us feel like we're making a little dent in the communities that we work with. But it couldn't happen without the goodwill and generosity of our donors and our staff. Really creative, really engaged people, and that's what drives the mission of the organization.
So maybe you could end with telling people how they could help. Like, what are some ways in which they could either donate or somehow support you?
Yeah. Again, we don't want your used book donations, but we do want recommendations or places where you think we might be able to go to receive new books. Although there is a surplus right now, we have to store them. You can easily go to our website to learn more about what we are doing and who we are. If you'd like to make a donation to our nonprofit, there's an easy way to do that on the site. We are going to be in the Bronx tomorrow. For anyone in New York who wants to come see us, say hello to Danielle. She'll be on the street. And we are back in some of our school programming. We are in person, and that's really been very heartening to see. But we'll continue to do virtual shows, and we'll continue to upload those shows for the general public to our YouTube channel. So I guess keep checking back in to see what might be interesting for you to participate in. And Danielle, I didn't want to cut you off, but if you had thoughts on what you wanted to leave with the audience.
Oh yeah, I'll say something really quick because I know we're already over time, but I'm so sorry, audience and everyone. Yeah, For me, I think it's really important. And I love what like I said, I keep saying I love what I do, but that is the truth. I had someone when I was younger who was in like English teacher, and she was inspiring. And there was just a moment that she, touched my life. And I want to be able to do that for someone else. And this is a means for me to do that, to be able to give someone that moment where they can, step outside of their life for a minute and be somebody else, or hear another story. And it's like, we're readers, you all know that reading a book is so important, and being able to just escape for a minute and see the world through somebody else's eyes, even just for 400 pages or 200 pages or just a minute. It really enriches your life, and it's about your life experiences. And I love being cause of that, right? Like, hey, I found this book for you. And if they can walk away and be happier for a moment, and we work with a lot of people who, don't have a lot, and I'm able to give them something not only physical, but something that they can have forever in their life. It's a life experience, right? This one time I met this girl on the street, and she gave me this book, and it's a catalyst, for me. It's a catalyst moment that I get to help drive. And that's like my personal reasons why I do it. I love my job. I love boss. My boss is great too. But for personally, that's, why I do this, is because I just really want to bring someone from A to B via written word, spoken word. Yeah.
Beautiful. That tangible experience of the book is something that Whitman truly believed in. So I feel like we've sort of come on back to Walt somehow. Danielle and Paul, thank you so much for being here and for introducing us to the House of Speakeasy. Danielle, I hope people in New York City will flock to the Bronx tomorrow. Tell me again where you're going to be, which plaza?
I will be in Fordham Plaza.
Fordham Plaza, what time?
Yeah. I'm starting 10 to 2. It looks like it might rain, so got to come before the rain gets me, because books and water don't do so well together.
Okay, Wednesday, the 23rd, 10 to 2, Fordham Plaza in the Bronx. And those of you that are listening in the future, just keep your eye on the House of Speakeasy and all the good work that they're doing. Again, Danielle, Paul, Tristan for being behind the scenes. Woohoo for Tristan. And also, he's awesome. I mean, nothing would happen without him. And for our viewers, thank you guys for tuning in. And, always thank you for your support. Good evening, everybody. Looking forward to seeing you on October 19th for our discussion with Fort Greene Park Conservancy. But for now, good night and happy reading.